What's happening, everyone? Welcome into episode 61 of the Two Stripes podcast, the podcast that covers everything happening in the world of college football. My name is Colton Denning, and I am your host, coming to you for the first time in a month here on the Two Stripes podcast. I am back on the grind, here to talk some college football, and I couldn't be more happy. Hope everyone's doing really well. If it's your first time listening to the show, thank you very much. Hope you enjoy it, and make sure to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, search Two Stripes Podcast, and go on to soundcloud.com/twostripespod. You can find the show there, and follow me on Twitter @Dubsco. That's where you can find me on the internet, and I am on YouTube as well, youtube.com/Colton Denning for some cool college football highlight videos. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into this week's show. So I don't know about y'all, but for the most part, this college football season has been pretty boring to me. There hasn't been a lot of intrigue. Alabama's been the most Alabama has ever been. They've just been absolutely dominant, and it doesn't look like there's a team outside of Clemson that can beat them. And for all intents and purposes, there just hasn't been a lot of spice to it. One of the good things about it, though, has been in those next 2 or 3 tiers of teams, there's been a couple programs that have jumped up there this season and have had really good years. And we're going to talk about one of them on the show today, and that's the Syracuse Orange. They are in year 3 of Dino Babers and him being at Syracuse, and they have been a lot of fun. I have watched so much Syracuse this year. I've gone out of my way to watch them. I think I even watched like the 25-minute extended cut highlight that the ACC network put up after their game against Wagner earlier this year, because they're just a really fun team. They have a lot of weapons on offense, and they're one of those programs that is growing right now, and it's so much fun to watch programs like that that are kind of figuring out how to win each week at a major level. So I figured, what the hell? Let's talk about him on the show. And I got in touch with John Castillo, the managing editor over at Troy Nunes is an Absolute Magician. And we sat down and talked for about 20 minutes about Syracuse, the upcoming game against Notre Dame, and how big of a game this is for the program, where they match up well, what he's worried about for Syracuse this weekend, and just the general health of the program, but mostly the game this week and what he thinks is going to happen, and a little bit about Notre Dame's ugly-ass jerseys. So that was fun to add in there as well. But without further ado, let's get right into it. Here is John Castillo of Troy Nunes is an Absolute Magician, breaking down the Syracuse Orange. I am super excited to be joined by one of the managing editors from Troy Nunes is an Absolute Magician, John Castillo. John, what's going on, man? Thank you for joining the show.
Of course, happy to be here.
All right, let's talk some Syracuse football, because this has been a pretty awesome season for Syracuse this year. 8-2, 2 separate 4-game win streaks, sandwiched with the loss at Clemson, close game, and the loss at Pitt. By the way, it feels like everybody in the ACC plays Pitt like 4 times during the season. It's always like, wow, Pitt's playing them again? Like the Pitt-Duke game happens 3 or 4 times a season. But they've had such an awesome year, and we'll talk about the game versus Notre Dame this weekend here in a second. But what has this been like for Syracuse fans and the build-up in Dino Babers' 3rd season to where the program is right now?
I think for us, really, it's just been an exciting run to see everything actually like come together. I mean, you know, everyone here believed in Dino, believed in Eric Dungy, believed in a lot of the pieces we had together. We just hadn't seen it all kind of come together and everyone stay healthy. So it's been great to see all of that really come to fruition. I mean, we're putting up almost 45 points a game. Defense is actually playing better than maybe the per game numbers would indicate. Still some room for improvement there, but overall, like, this is something that's, 20 years in the making for a lot of Syracuse fans that have been waiting for us to get back to a level where, we're top 10, top 15 contenders. And some of the advanced metrics put some doubt on that. And I won't I won't say they're wrong, but at the same time, like, every program kind of gets lucky here and there and has what's a special or a magical season where maybe you get a couple more wins than you were supposed to. Maybe you get some turnover luck, whatever it is. So I think Syracuse fans, couldn't be happier with the result right now, despite the fact that those two losses in there were both pretty close. And there's some, at least, thinking about what could be if a couple drives had gotten completed against Pitt and Clemson.
What have Babers and his staff, what are a couple of things that him and his staff have done to get the program to this point?
A lot of it's been just building like real competitive, like Power 5 depth, things that we just didn't have under Scott Schaefer. Doug Marrone left right as we were transitioning from the Big East to the ACC. Schaefer was kind of a continuity hire, but didn't necessarily hire like a P5 staff the way that was needed. So like we had quality players, but there really wasn't a ton of depth behind those guys. We were recruiting a lot against MAC schools. Our staff was largely like MAC caliber. So that didn't necessarily help our case, but now Babers is bringing in, a lot of high 3-star guys, some 4-star guys. I mean, Tommy DeVito, who's Eric Dungy's backup at quarterback, was a 4-star guy, went to Elite 11. Like there's a lot of great talent in there, and you're starting to see even now some of those freshmen coming in and getting big minutes. So I think, the help is big, but I think that depth that he's been able to build and that belief that these guys can win. I mean, we haven't had a winning season since 2013. So for a lot of these guys, like this is really their first and some of them only shot to have a winning season in college. So I think getting them to believe in themselves and getting them to believe that, Syracuse can compete and play with anyone was part of the job for him. And I think he's done that extremely well.
So I try to watch Syracuse as much as I can. I think I've watched 4 or 5 games this season, and me and one of my best friends have a running text thread going on of some of the hits that Eric Dungy takes. And you talked about the Syracuse fans really believing in him. And we'll get to his skill set and what it means for the Notre Dame game here in a second. But I just wanted to say that he is, like, by definition, one of the toughest sons of bitches I've ever seen step up on the football field. How is it watching him week in and week out play quarterback so physically?
I mean, it's horrifying. It's thrilling. It's a lot of things all at once. I think, the Eric Dungy experience is you take the good and the bad, and you can't have one without the other. I think, most quarterbacks, if you take a couple too many hits, the solution is take fewer hits. The solution for Dungy this whole time has been just get bigger. So you can take more hits. I mean, so far it's kind of worked this year, but yeah, I mean, now you're looking at a quarterback who, is 6'4", 232 and looks like he has inflatable muscles on. Versus a guy who was like about 195 coming onto campus. So I don't know if that's a tact I would recommend for every quarterback looking to take fewer hits, but I guess it's worked for Dungy.
One of the things that I really like about this offense and how it relates getting into the Notre Dame game is just the variety of weapons they have and how differently they're built. You look in the receiving core, and the leading receiver, Jamal Custis, is 6'5", 210, big-bodied guy. And then Sean Riley at 5'8", 170 is a guy that's not only explosive on offense, but explosive as a punt returner as well. You have guys like Taj Harris, 6'2", 175 as a freshman. And then even in the running game, you mentioned Eric Dungy packing on a little bit of weight. He's at 6'4", 226. And then Mo Neal, the leading running back, at 5'11", 191. And it just seems like they've gone out of their way to build a really different variety of offensive weapons to kind of attack defenses with. How do you expect that to test Notre Dame, and where do you think that they can take advantage of Notre Dame's defense?
I mean, Notre Dame's passing defense is one of the best in the country, so I don't want to downplay that at all. I think that's going to pose a huge challenge. This offense is designed, though, to create as many opportunities as possible to help make up for a gap in, talent. So Notre Dame is going to be able to stop us in one aspect or another, but there's no way they're going to be able to stop all of them. So having 3 capable running backs plus Dungy in the run game, having 4 or 5 receivers who we can target out there, someone's going to get open or someone's going to make a play. We'll see how many chances we have at that. I think really it's going to come down to can Notre Dame keep Dungy in the pocket? If they can keep him in the pocket, we're going to be hampered significantly. I think you saw a lot of that in the second half for Syracuse against Clemson, parts of the game against Wake Forest early when we were struggling a little bit on offense. When Dungy is limited and can't really roll out of the pocket and extend the field, that's when he starts to struggle. He's not super accurate, and he doesn't have a really, really strong arm. So the ability to move that pocket and just start to create mistakes in the secondary is really his biggest weapon. So I'm hoping that we can do at least some of that in this one. I don't necessarily expect, even if we win, to put up more than 35 points or so. This should be an interesting test to see what Dungey can do against this defense.
So you think that's kind of the key to the game, is whether or not Dungey can get out of the pocket and then have that passing game kind of build on the running game as well, with how freely he's is or is not able to move?
Oh yeah, I think that's definitely going to be key, like I said. And anyone who's able to keep him in the pocket and can find and limit him as a runner is automatically going to have a huge advantage, because then if you limit him as a runner, chances are you're limiting our traditional running game. I mean, I think we only had 39 yards or so on the ground against Clemson, and he really didn't take off at all against the Tigers. And you saw us, severely limited in the second half when we were pretty much just relying on a downfield passing game that was kind of hit or miss.
When it comes to Syracuse, almost everybody from the outside looking in always talks about the offense first with Babers and Dungey and some of the weapons they have, and I know we just did that. But how are they built on defense, and how do you think that they match up with Notre Dame on that side of the ball?
Defensively, this team is starting to round into what it's supposed to be under Babers. Babers brought in at Tampa too. Hasn't necessarily worked out that way. I think this year we're kind of still in like a 4-3 base that we sometimes alter to a 4-2-5. We've also gone a little blitz heavy this year, and I think that's really helped. We have a secondary that, while a little more experienced, has some youth in there too, but they get exploited. They're really high risk, high reward. The key for us is going to be that defensive line. The front four for Syracuse is it's definitely top half in the conference. Maybe it's even a little bit higher, just because of what they're able to do with pressure. Alton Robinson's got 9 sacks. Kendall Coleman has, I think, 7.5 or 8. We have a lot of great pressure up the middle too. I think if SU can generate pressure and make Ian Book throw quickly, I think that's going to do wonders for the team, because to be honest, I really want to almost encourage Notre Dame to throw as much as possible, because that's the only way Syracuse wins this game. You can look at the end of the Clemson game, the end of the Pitt game, for teams that just kind of leaned on us with the run and really shredded us. So if Notre Dame gets in a situation where they have to pass a lot, we're just going to send the house every play, and that's only going to create opportunities for the secondary, which is a big part of why we have such a high turnover margin, and we've been one of the better teams in the country this year at creating turnovers.
What's your biggest worry for the defense heading into this game?
Oh, it's that run game. I think if Williams gets going, if some of these other guys get going, and they just decide to pound us up the middle, you see plenty of teams that have a power rushing attack have been able to just absolutely gash us between the tackles, and we're giving up 5-6 yards a clip.
I just want to say that if any team out there has a defender named Trill Williams on the squad, that is a team for me. And I saw that he made his first start of the year, and Baber seems a little bit concerned about the corner player, at least the depth there. How's that shaking out, and how big of a role do you expect that to play, not only this week, but going forward as Syracuse heads into the postseason?
I think Trill is, probably one of the biggest. Him and Andre Sisco, another freshman. They're the two big high risk, high reward guys. Chris Frederick is actually one of the better cover defenders in the conference, I think, and he's really good at corner. The injuries that Baber was referring to were to Scoop Bradshaw and Afitu Melifonwu, who's Obi Melifonwu's younger brother. Both of them kind of gone out in the last couple of weeks with some injuries. Scoop was definitely upper body, might have been a wrist injury. I wasn't sure about Afitu, but I'd say check the tape on that one. Might have been lower body for him. So throwing Trill in there, again, he's somebody who can make a big play, but he's somebody who can also give up a few big plays. So it would be great to have all those guys, because if Notre Dame's going to throw that football, we're going to need as many guys out there as possible, being able to break those plays up. And you can't necessarily just rely on Frederick and Trill to make a lot of those plays, especially towards the line of scrimmage where the safeties can't be as much help.
Something you brought up just a second ago was the turnover margin. Syracuse right now sits at plus 13, good for 4th in the country, and they've just been so productive on the defensive side of the ball, generating those turnovers and avoiding turnovers on the other side of the ball. You think that that's probably a key to this game, because they've been so good this season, and some of it's luck, but I think some of it too has to be good coaching, taking care of the ball, and playing aggressive with some of those guys in the secondary, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think for us, it's some luck. I mean, we have a bunch of fumble recoveries, and that's almost entirely luck. They're all 50-50 balls, but we have a decent number of interceptions. I mean, Cisco has 5 as a freshman. He had 4 through like the first 3 games. So he's someone that just understands how to not just, get in front of the ball, but also come down with it. So I think it's a lot of coaching too, though. We found a way to play somewhat of a Tampa 2 here while also adopting some of the principles of a lot of these guys any of these guys who were recruited by, Scott Schaefer and his regime, they were all completely based on, creating havoc up front, creating havoc with the linebackers. So these guys understand how to play disruptive style of football on defense. And I think, good on the defensive staff for figuring that they're probably better off leaning into that versus trying to get them to be something they're not.
And it also seems like special teams it plays a big role in every single game, but especially in this game. And I did not know this until reading what you guys wrote today, that Syracuse is number 1 in special teams S&P Plus, and that's played a huge role in their success. They're first in field position on offense, 7th in defense, and that's really something that I think a lot of people don't talk about it, but especially in these big-time games, can really set the tone for a game and change the course of it, and maybe the reason that they end up winning if they pull it off.
If you look at what SU's done this year on special teams, it's pretty miraculous. And like defense has played a part in this too. I mean, between turnovers, the fact that the defense has been able to pin teams back and really, either get a short field for the offense or force them to punt from far out. I know right now our average starting field position offensively is about the 37-yard line. That's basically a free first down. So like starting from there is huge. SU plays really, really well in between the 20s offensively, so can't be overstated how important that's been for us this year. Plus, we have a great punter in Sterling Hoffrichter, arguably the best in the conference. We have who might be the best field goal kicker in the country this year, and Andre Schmidt. He's only 4 away from tying the record for most field goals made in a season. And this was a guy who started the season as a walk-on and then earned a scholarship during the Pitt game this year. So with those types of weapons out there, and also having Riley, as you mentioned, on kicks, and for him, even if he's not touching the ball on kick returns, teams are altering their strategy and avoiding him quite a bit, which is helping us out. And early in the season, it was resulting in kicks out of bounds, squib kicks that would end up getting returned 15, 20 yards. And then with him, turns like teams are scared to kick to him because he took one back against UConn, and he regularly, can advance the ball, 7 to 10 yards, at minimum. So I think having all those factors in play really gives us a lot of ways to hurt opposing teams.
So for the people that don't know, and I'm sure everybody does at this point, this game is going to be in New York City at Yankee Stadium, and Syracuse is breaking out the all-white look, and Notre Dame is breaking out quite the look with the hybrid, as you guys said, the Ed Hardy looking Yankees / Notre Dame hybrid. What do you think about those?
I mean, the second they came out and looked at this and said, like, this is just garbage. like I don't care what program you are, but if you're Notre Dame, you've got to have some more standards in this. There's some tradition. There's a certain look that you're supposed to have as Notre Dame, and the green jerseys are one thing, but this crap, come on, man. You wouldn't find this at a random off-brand fan shop 3 blocks from Yankee Stadium.
I'll tell you where you will find it though, because I have been known in the past, and maybe still currently, to frequent some of those offshore jersey sites, and if you go in and you look at them, they have, especially the football jerseys, whether it's college or NFL, they have all these wild different camo jerseys or jerseys with the pictures play on it, just stuff that you would never see. And this seems like one of those that you would be browsing on a Chinese website for fake jerseys, and you'd be like, wow, the Yankees Notre Dame Duke mashup. What a look.
I know. There's probably a J.J. Redick's name on the back of all of them, and stars to commemorate the Lakers championships.
I feel like we can further this idea more for the next Notre Dame Shamrock Series game. I feel like they're going to play that one at Staples Center, and it'll have LeBron's jersey number on the back and his name on the back of each jersey. But back to the actual game as we kind of wrap this up here. What are 2 things that you're most worried about, and 2 things that you're confident that Syracuse can do?
I'm most worried about the run game and stopping it. Dexter Williams has been very, very good since he returned this year. 113 carries, 770 yards, 10 touchdowns. That horrifies me. I'm really scared to see Notre Dame's defensive line and if they can shut down our run game, because that makes us incredibly one-dimensional, and that usually spells some doom for Syracuse. In terms of things I'm confident we can do, I'm confident we're going to be able to move the football. It's just a question of whether or not we're going to be able to get into the end zone. SU has struggled quite a bit in touchdown percentage. When they get into the red zone, they regularly get there, but rarely actually punch it in. Most of our touchdowns, I think, have been from outside the 20, which is a weird stat. So I'd say that concerns me too. But yeah, I think we can move the ball well. And I do think that special teams is going to be a factor. I think we can find some way to either take one back or more likely at least get a few nice returns that set us up well. What we do from there, though, again, is back in the concern pile.
Where does this game rank in terms of like on the big game scale for Syracuse in the last 15, 20 years in recent program memory?
Recent program memory, like these are since 2001, these are the biggest stakes we've had this late in the season. So for us, it's probably number one. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find an SU fan at this point that since Donovan McNabb graduated to find a game with bigger implications for the Orange.
And finally, unless you're holding it out for the site, what is your prediction for Saturday?
No, I won't hold out. I've already tossed it out a couple other places. I think SU does enough to stick around, but I think Vegas has this one pegged pretty well. I'm going Notre Dame 44, Syracuse 34. I just think that Notre Dame's going to be able to do enough on the ground and exploit us enough through the pass. Dungy's going to be able to get his numbers, and I think you're going to see a lot of playmakers get involved, and maybe we get a turnover or two. But I think that the defensive line in particular is just going to prove too much. And if you told me at the beginning of the season that we were going to lose by 10 to Notre Dame and still, have 8 wins, I'd be fine with that. So I'm going to try to view things in that perspective that this is fine.
Well, I know I'm super excited for it. I'm pulling for Syracuse, not only because nobody wants to root for Notre Dame, but also because Syracuse is so much fun. And I don't think we've had a fall yet where the Yankees have lost at home in the playoffs, and then Notre Dame goes and loses in Yankee Stadium as well. I think that would be quite the fall of 2018. But if you want to keep up with this game or anything going on from the Syracuse perspective or for the rest of the season and basketball season, which has started up now for them, make sure to visit nunesmagician.com. You can also follow them on Twitter at nunesmagician. And John, where can they follow you?
You can follow me at John Castillo on Twitter.
Give John a follow. Give Nunes Magician a follow. They're hilarious. They had a great Bobby Petrino Photoshop the other day. So keep up with all of their work there and enjoy the game on Saturday. John, thanks for joining the show, man, and shedding some light on Syracuse football.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
That's going to be the game of the week as far as I'm concerned. I'm really excited for it, and this would be a major moment in Syracuse football if they were able to pull it off. So excited for that game, rooting hard for the Orange, and hoping that they can dash Notre Dame's playoff hopes. At the same time, it's a win-win for everybody. Be sure to check out Nunes Magician. All of the stuff that John and his staff there do is fantastic. They're top of the line, some of the best out on the college football internet, and I can't wait to see what their reaction to this game is going to be as it's happening and the post-game stuff, especially if Syracuse wins. So make sure to check them out. Follow them on Twitter and follow John on Twitter. And thanks to John for joining the show. That was a really awesome way to kind of kickstart the podcast up back again as we head into the final couple weeks here of the regular season. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you stick around and listen to future episodes of the show, which you can by subscribing to Stripes Podcast on Apple and SoundCloud.com/TwoStripesPod. And also follow me on Twitter at Dubsco, and see everything else I'm doing video-wise on YouTube, youtube.com/Colton Denning. I'll be back next week with a new episode. It's rivalry week, so you know it's going to be a lot of fun. I don't know who I'm going to talk with or what I'm going to talk about, but there's a lot of good rivalries, so I will pick one, possibly two, and break those down. So be on the lookout for that. Keep your podcast feeds open. But until then, my name is Colton Denning. I want to thank you one last time for listening to today's show, and this is the Two Stripes Podcast.